Our next reader is Susan Lilley, who I have the pleasure of calling my teacher for a brief time, anyway. Susan's work has appeared recently in Poet Lore, The Southern Review, Passenger, New Madrid, Appalachia Review, and in other journals. She is the 2009 winner of the Rita Dove Poetry Award and the recipient of a Florida Individual Artist Fellowship. In 2006, her chapbook, Night Windows, won the Yellow Jacket Press contest. She teaches literature and writing theory at Trinity Preparatory School and is an adjunct professor at Rollins College. She is also an Orlando native. Her poetry collection, Satellite Beach, comes out later this month. Please join me in welcoming Susan Lilley.
Thanks, Jared. Isn't it great that Jared's going to be our social maitre d' later? So if you're bored, you can just say, please find me someone more interesting to talk to. I can't wait. Thank you. This is such a great series, and there are so many literary outlets around here. I'm really excited that this is starting, and I can't wait to come to the next one. And honored to be involved. Can everyone hear me? Do I need to eat the microphone more? Okay, great. The first poem I'm going to read is my favorite poem because it's in a current magazine. Sort of like children, you know, you don't really love one more than the other, except the one that's making straight A's right now, so it's like, anyway. Have you ever had the experience where you run into someone that you think you ran into them, you saw them somewhere, maybe on the street, and you realize, is that person that I had some intense experience with, like a couple of decades ago, and then it haunts you for days? So that's what this poem is about. It's called Mirage. I know it's a pretentious title. I'm really sorry. Mirage. I bet you're wondering if that was me you saw across the lake downtown when the sun, after glazing the air to wavy glass, gave its last to the disappearing dream of skyline. The darkening came so quickly, we fell out of each other's sight. Blind mosquitoes chasing us from opposite shores. In another life, you darkened my silver nova with your denim hips and your beard, a cloud fragrant with wanting. We drove to the sound of the moon coming out of a saxophone. We drove, empty baby seat in back, looking for a dark, air-conditioned theme park that celebrated adultery with enchiladas and avocados and beer you hoped was bright enough to slake my Episcopal thirst and bring me to your side of a table set for transgression. Slipstream. Thank you. Cars, bars, and stars. Well, to save you the trouble, you really don't need to applaud anymore. But thank you. It eats into my reading time. No, I'm kidding. We're very strict here at Functionally. No, I'm kidding. This is a poem I love to read when I'm in the presence of any Kerouac-related people because it's inspired by the Kerouac House, and it was a very lucky poem for me, as it turned out. The title is Hegemony. And it starts with an epigraph, not from literature, but from my mother. Your father's had a very hard day. Not long after Jack Kerouac lived in misery and squalor while typing the Dharma Bums in a still tiny room of a hot cracker box, across town my parents dressed themselves up as beatniks for a Halloween party. Mom did her best Baez in black tights and flat capezios, a braid made of yarn down her back. Dad and his 5 o'clock shadow went as Maynard G. Krebs, a fake beat from TV, with bongo drums under his arm. A tense young lawyer on a lark, his face wore the same smirk he used for women drivers, the poor, and the simple faith of country road signs in the South. Get right with God always cracked him up. What he could not understand, he trivialized with his own brand of sharpshooting arrogance. Mom gave the babysitter her orders and threw frozen chicken pot pies into the oven, while Dad impatiently roamed the house with his bongos, gin and tonic in hand. The oldest, I waited until they left to wrap myself in my favorite costume, Mom's bridal trousseau robe, the satin cold like heavy cream, already stained and frayed at the lacy sleeves. Over on Clouser Street, maybe Jack poured another one and lay down and dreamed himself out of Florida. For Jack. Everyone has a love poem, and this one's mine. Aging bride considers her checkered past. The one who drove a green MG that smelled of beach sweat and my perfume. The one who lost his voice for a year. The two that became ministers. The one who cheated on me and had the nerve to be outraged when I cheated on him. The one I tried to kill with my own hands in a dream. The one who stole my underwear for his collection. The one who taught me to make cornbread. The one who cried with me outside the daycare the morning of our divorce. The one with the long red hair who played the saxophone all morning in bed. The one who complained of my cruelty on his late-night radio show. The one who lent me his daughter until I had one of my own. The one who left notes for me when it was over, dozens of them all over my apartment, the last found the following winter in the toe of a boot. And then the one whose car became a shiny black X-rated movie when we climbed into it, who can tell time without looking at a clock, whose dolphin velvet skin draws my touch night after summer night, who pulls me to his furnace heart year after shivering year, and still laughs after we make love like a well-fed Viking. His bridegroom voice as ageless as his hand on my ageless thigh. Ageless thigh. I wish! But I want to thank my husband, Phil, for allowing me to read that poem. It embarrasses the living shit out of him. And, you know, people always say, are your poems true? Poetry's so great because you can lie, you can like mix up. So when people say, did that really happen? My answer is always the same. In my head it did. This poem is dedicated to all the young women here, and many of you are my good friends, and I think you're just so fabulous. So this poem is for you. It's called Permission. First, you learn that after a certain age, you should no longer suck your thumb in public, nor should you wear yard pants with no shirt or answer the phone, who is it? Then, at some point, it becomes clear that you really should not beat soda machines or eat all the peppermint ice cream or make out on the carpet until your edges shriek with burning. Then comes a time you should not untie the top of your bathing suit while lying under the sun, which used to touch you lavishly with love light, the sun that stole your beauty one day and moved on like a lover changing the locks when you're at the grocery store. There is an age past which you must not flirt with anyone except babies. Not bartenders, not fellow travelers. You don't need to ask for directions. The future is deforested. But notice, now you can roll down the car windows and listen to Etta James or Cat Power as loud as you want. You can love without losing the hard jewel glowing deep in your chest. Your scent is the honey of loyalty. You can lie on a picnic blanket with your girlfriends at an art festival. Drink wine, watch the air turn from gold to blue. You may even dance in a pool of tourmaline shade by a darkening lake and smoke pot with your oldest friend because you are free, because finally, no one is paying any attention to you. That's the future, ladies. It's not so bad. A New York poem, obviously. And lots of chanting good vibes to everybody up there. This poem's called The Endless Boogie. The Endless Boogie is the name of a band which I just found out recently is still playing. This happened, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and I thought, they're dead in the water. They're still around. And as someone who's a big music fan, I often find myself as the oldest person at the rock show, so it's one of those. The Endless Boogie. On a corner in my son's adopted city, he greets my cab with hipster chivalry, tossing his long Byronic hair as he leaps to the curb, so smiling and a quarter-century tall. Inside the Mercury Lounge, there is no sitting, only milling, or leaning against a piece of throbbing wall. No good wine, only headache in a glass, and smoke. I am too old at first, and the opening act, The Endless Boogie, nearly finishes me off. But then, the boys from Sweden we have come to hear, whose name is like a clump of trees, start up an old mythology we all recognize, even in another language. Gold melted and fire passed from hand to hand, lighting my son's oceanic eyes so worldly, even as a small boy swinging a bat for the camera. I slowly relinquish my age and am refined to a mere presence, flickering under denim and amethyst. He is at home here, his long limbs and tireless shining companions. Later, when I'm dreaming in a silky uptown hotel I can scarce afford, they will still be dancing at 4 a.m., some warehouse dive in Brooklyn where lust and friendship arm wrestle on beer-splattered tabletops until the sun plods in like a tired house mother and forces these kids home to the daylit sleep of infants. Okay. 2 more poems. This one is about, goes a little further back in time, and it's about a time in Orlando where there was a really fabulously tawdry dinner theater that Edgewater High School recently ate. But if you've been around a while, you know what I'm talking about. And of all the crappy jobs I've had, this was one of the best. This is called Dressing Sal Mineo. If you don't know who Sal Mineo is, you really must Google him. I watched Rebel Without a Cause on TV one late college night when I learned Sal Mineo was our next big draw at Once Upon a Stage dinner theater. He would star in a stupid play about romantic entanglements, perfect for group sales and Sunday matinees filled with oldsters on field trips from the homes. I had been too old to see Rebel on a date at the movies, but my babysitters swooned over James Dean, and I figured Sal was the same kind of deal, only a survivor, now in his handsome 40s. On the show, I was the star's dresser, waiting in a tiny curtain square for him to run off the stage during quick changes. I helped him take off his clothes and put on different ones. He shone in the backstage dark, and we all fell in love, boys and girls alike. But I was the one he asked to bring a Sprite with lemon from the bar. He closed the dressing room door, looked me in the eye. I've been watching people here all day and have decided to ask you, do you think you could find me some really good shit? That night, I called every pot-smoking friend I knew. I buttoned his shirt while he zipped his tuxedo pants. We had 5 seconds. Sal snapped on the fake bow tie as I presented him the nickel bag. And he beamed his Hollywood warmth at me. Thanks, kid. He jammed the bag into his pocket and leapt back to the stage. He was near the end of his life, and he had no idea. One night before the curtain went up on another awful play, the news spilled from the hostess stand that Sal was stabbed to death in a parking lot in LA. For years, I kept his dressing room stereo, moved it from life to life, let my kids spin endless Sesame Street, then Michael Jackson and Van Halen, until it finally died with a fuzzy needle and 4 old pennies taped to its stylus. So nice. Gosh. My poets get more applause for short, limited attention span pieces. This is a poem that took place in Florida in the 60s, and it's part of my previous chapbook, which is Night Windows, and just a little commercial. Girls, smile and wave. So, students. Anyway, along with some great stuff from the Kerouac House, I have this, and also some postcards from my upcoming collection, which sadly is not in hand yet, but will be soon. So visit all the tables this evening. Anyway, this is a poem from that book. It's called Experienced, Jacksonville, 1967. It's about a time I was sent to church camp with my cousin into the bowels of North Florida, and we were basically preached to with threats of hell for all week. And then one day, they put us all in buses and took us to a rock show in Jacksonville. Anyway, there's a historical note that goes with the poem. In 1967, Jimi Hendrix was briefly the opening act for the Monkees' first U.S. tour. And if you don't know who the Monkees are, you must Google them also. I'm assuming Jimi Hendrix is a known quantity, so you all look pretty culturally illiterate. Experienced. The counselors loaded us onto the bus. My best cousin and I were ready. She wore pink shorts and a top by Villager. But I, considering us way ahead of the other church camp losers, wore my psychedelic orange mini dress with giant daisies that glowed in a black light and made me look tan. My cousin had painted daisies on my unpierced earlobes. Smears of Clearasil covered razor nicks on our legs. We wore white lipstick and a cloud of perfume, taboo. We stood in the back and picked out boys. One stood up and burped the alphabet. Enthralled, we yelled gross and looked out the window. At the concert, everything happened. Jimi Hendrix made us wild. We broke from the pack and moved up front. People were waving their arms in spirals and wiggling slowly. A boy way too old talked to me. Every time he moved close, my cousin grabbed my arm and closed-mouth screamed. He said, "How old are you?" And I said, "I don't know." I think I was smiling. I stared at the stage and he said, "Hey, baby, talk to me." My cousin pulled me away and we moved closer to the front. We were in trouble now. The music made my blood change color. Gold, silver, as it revved through me. If I were a boy, I would have had an erection. I knew for the first time in hours what it meant to be alive. I was the last part of 14. At camp the next day, we had to write extra 10 commandments for not staying with the group. Thanks, y'all.